In an age where documents have gone mostly digital now, paper prints are still somewhat being utilized more or less in the field. Say a clean set's kept in the superintendent's trailer, but certainly the industry is going towards paperless management of documents, and the transmission of the latest and greatest sets and updates to those documents to the field instantaneously is becoming more and more important, especially for those of you entering the field. Would likely be put in charge of ensuring this transition of documents would take place. That would kind of be more or less put in your wheelhouse. Again, that may differ from company to company. You may actually have somebody who's pointed to that position in the company is responsible for that. But you could be faced with the task of digitally managing document sets, from the drawings to specifications to RFIs, the submittals, etc. So what I'm going to do as a tutorial in this first tutorial series on Bluebeam is really going to show you, number one, the advantages of managing sets digitally, and how to go about, or basically what are the best practices for doing this. Now, this program, Bluebeam, you'll be each receiving a copy of it, courtesy of Bluebeam, at least a 1-year license for you to test out on your own. By no means is this the only digital management software out there. You have other programs that are incorporated into more project management based softwares like Procore. Might have the ability to automatically link documents and put RFIs on the sheets. There's other apps that can do this work as well. Bluebeam is something that is fairly common, at least in my experience with construction companies. Definitely more favored over, say, an Adobe program, because this Bluebeam is more or less geared towards the construction professional. It offers you the ability to mark up documents, to hyperlink documents, construction documents, to manage punch lists, as we'll also do another series on that, and beyond. I mean, this thing can read 3-dimensional PDFs. It can take measurements. It can do quantity takeoffs, and then you can also have it calculate values based on those quantity takeoffs. So, very powerful and useful tool in the construction industry, and I just wanted you as a student to be aware that programs like this exist out there and how you can utilize them to the best of your ability to help your own workflow. So if your company, just like with SketchUp for instance, I mentioned, most companies don't invest, or not, I won't say most companies, but some companies find it difficult to invest in the more expensive programs like Revit. So being able to download a SketchUp software to help you 3-dimensionally manage drawing sets, or 3-dimensionally manage details and whatnot, is highly useful to entry-level positions. So the same as this Bluebeam software, as a student you can outright purchase a license of this through the university, as a student of the university, for I believe $100. Bluebeam has graciously allowed us for this first set to give a 1-year license, but beyond that, we're going to be talking as a department as how we maybe facilitate this in the future. But again, wanted to give you some experience in it to help you understand why it would be so important. What I mean by that is, I'll go ahead and just give an example, or pull up an example of a document set that is maybe something you might be faced with when you first get out into the field. So here we have a set of construction plans that were issued for a particular project. It's, as you can see here, it's 218 sheets in this entire set. A lot of sheets. We can jump here real quick to a sheet index, and you can see all the various different types of sheets that are actually issued in here. So one of the challenges of managing drawing sets digitally is that you want to make them easily navigable, or easy to navigate, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time finding the drawings digitally, where it's a little more challenging to do that in a digital sense like this if the drawings aren't labeled. As we can see here, for instance, the drawings just come in labeled just by number. So if I scroll through this set, drawing number 18, I don't know exactly what drawing that is, based on what the sheet was given, this number in the set, because it's likely just the number of the drawing that was slip sheeted in there in that order. We know that this drawing is GN-302. That's the sheet name, but how do we relate that to the sheet? Well, we could go in and just physically just rename the sheet GN-302, but if I have to do that 218 times, that might get a little time consuming. So you might check, if the architect can make sure that their sheets are labeled properly and accordingly. That can save you some time up front. But some programs can do auto sheet labels where they can detect what that sheet name is. So for instance here, I can create page labels, and it really is a sense of knowing the program or the type of sheet that you're using, that if your drawings are searchable, as far as the text is searchable, it makes it a little easier to do this process. So in this case, I can select a page region, and I can tell it to search the sheets in this region, and you can see it automatically picked up GN-302. We can hit OK, and I want to apply this to all pages, just be sure. Hit OK. And it might take a few minutes to actually run through that for all 218 pages. The other caveat to this is it's not uncommon for architects to have different title blocks, which is this area off over here, and how they label their sheets and exactly where on the sheet it's labeled. That you saw me draw that square around GN-302, but the civil sheets might not be in that exact location. The electrical sheets might not be in that exact location. So this might work for all the architectural sheets, and then you're going to have to go and do this with the structural, the civil, and the others. If you though have an architect that requires all of their consultants to use their title block, the architect's title block, then typically all of the page labels will be labeled pretty much in the same spot. So there's GN-302. So we can look through here and see that indeed we actually have started to pick up the actual page labels themselves, A208. This is actually going to come in handy down the road as we start hyperlinking these drawings to make it even quite a bit more fast than just jumping in the bookmarks or these thumbnails to try and find pages. But if we can go to, say, the sheet index here as the second page here, if we can somehow create links where I can come in here and just click on that sheet and it will jump me to that sheet, that would save me a lot of time on navigating the drawings. And as you'll see in these examples, we're going to cut our time down by a lot. Just by labeling the pages themselves, that's going to cut drastically down on the time it takes to navigate the drawings. So one thing we can do to see how this worked, I can scroll through here and see what point this might change to something that's not supposed to be, or I could come in here as well. This was the thumbnail view, but in 2018 we have the bookmarks, which I can create bookmarks based on the page labels that I just created. So I can actually come in here and create bookmarks from page labels and apply that to all pages, and it should populate all of those sheet names off here, as you see that I've done here. And I can just scroll through and see where these sheet numbers might start to not follow the same protocol as others, where in this case it appears as though the architect had that title block as a requirement in the same exact location. But if this started saying, weird letters or symbols in here, it might indicate that the electrical sheets, the title of the sheet might be orientated vertically here or something like that. So you just have to be careful. And you can go in and do this as you saw me do for the architectural sheet and find out if it applies to all 218 pages, or maybe half of those pages you have to go back and choose a new bookmark and only apply it to a certain number of pages that weren't labeled properly. But with our good luck here, we appear to have again an architect that has taken the time to require their consultants to utilize their title block. So every single sheet is labeled in the same exact area. And you can kind of see that by this example that I'm going to show you here, where if I kind of leave this title here, if I click between the sheets, you see how it's relatively staying in that same block area. It shifts slightly depending upon the length of the numbers and the letter sequences you see here, but ultimately excuse me, ultimately it's staying in the same place. You can actually even expand on the sheet number by including the label of the sheet. I used to do that and found it a little cumbersome, where it was some of the sheet labels got to the point where they were extremely long, so it was kind of difficult to make that accommodation in the page label. But as an example here, I'll go back up to the as an example, I'll go back up to the architectural sheets here. So for instance, this A201 sheet, I could go back to this create page labels, and I could do again page region select. I could tell it, okay, I want it to label this first, A201, and then I want to create an actual label for the sheet, so I'll do a space dash space and add another area where I want it to pull information off. And just under this sheet name here, I'll highlight this area below, so it'll look on every single sheet for that information. You see here it pulled up building type A floor plans. Well, that's exactly what it says there, building type A floor plans. So it would label each of these sheets in here with some additional information that's provided here. If you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to. It's for my own personal use. I find just the page label itself is useful because I go through the process of providing additional links in there where you don't necessarily need to know what the label beyond the page number is going to be for each sheet. But by all means, if you'd like to do that, you can do that quite easily. You just have to be careful sometimes too, because the program, depending upon how the sheet was exported, might not be able to read some of these words up here. They might be in a what we call raster format, where if I keep zooming in, it won't render. You'll see the words are really blocky, the letters are blocky, but you'll notice this particular sheet happens to be in a vector format, which means that as I zoom in on it, it continuously keeps rendering and makes the letters crisp again. So again, if you're zooming in on something and like a C, for instance, would look really blocky, that's a good indication that you can't use this feature to have the system automatically figure out what that label is going to be. But having said that, again, we've already got our pages labeled. In good habit that you modify it. I want to save that, so make sure that you're saving that as you go, just so that you don't lose any of that work that you just did there. Even though it really wasn't all that difficult, you can see it was with a few clicks you were able to go in here and relabel all these pages. So already what we have is a much easier navigable document, in that now at least I know what these page numbers are. So if I know I'm looking to go to sheet A204, well, there it is. I got the label right there. I can jump real quick to A204. I don't need to know that it was the 63rd page in this entire 218 page document, But again, just being able to click on A204 and it take you to that sheet is a step above what we started with. Okay, but we're going to go way beyond that, and as you'll see here, hopefully you can appreciate the direction that we're going to go here as well. So one thing I actually, as a rule of thumb, do after I get my sheet labels completed, I actually go through and I will export each of these sheets as an individual file. And one of the reasons I do that is it makes slip sheeting new issuances of sheets later a lot easier to do. if I have them as individual files, but also it does help speed up the process of viewing drawings if I don't have, for instance, a good connection back to a drive folder, or I'm working off of just a bad connection where it might take a while to update a sheet visually and render it in a set of drawings that's 218 sheets large. I mean, that's a fairly large file size. So breaking them up individually can reduce the RAM requirements for the program to actually read each sheet. So in order to do that, you have to go to the thumbnails view here, and if you just select a drawing and right click, you can see here there's an extract pages feature where you can go select all pages. And what we're going to do is, for one, use the page labels to name the file, so each individual file will be named or labeled as the page label, so the file name will become that. These are options that you can check. For instance, if you're going to you want to extract each page as a separate file, which we do. If I don't have that checked, it's not going to allow me to check use page label or overwrite existing files. So if there was already an A203 in there, it would overwrite it, but I need to select that feature there. I don't want to open them after extraction because it'll open 218 individual files, and I don't want that just yet. Updating hyperlinks, that's if we have had any hyperlinks in there. I just keep that checked just in case there are. But I want to keep this set as a compiled set until I'm completely done linking it, so I don't want to delete the pages out of that file either. Again, just having these options selected is all I'm going to do here, and hit OK, and then it's going to ask me, well, where do you want to save this? So what I'm going to do here is just create a folder, excuse me, and call it extracted files. Select that folder, and then it's going to go through the process of exporting each one of those sheets as a separate file. And you'll see here when I'm going to pause it here so you don't have to wait for this to go through that process. And when you come back, you'll see that each page is actually extracted. So here, if we go to our extracted files now, you'll see we have 218 individual files, and they're all labeled with that sheet label as we created from Bluebeam. You'll also notice here, this is a quick way to see what sheet sets you might be missing. In this case, the civil sheets were issued separately because one thing I don't see in here is a civil set of sheets. So I see A, architectural, E, electrical, GN is just general. It has the wall types, things like that in it, and your sheet index, the cover. M for mechanical, P for plumbing, S for structural, and that's it. So I don't have any fire protection drawings, landscape drawings, civil drawings, or any other specialty type consultant drawings in the set. So that might be a first indication that you need to engage somebody for maybe some additional drawings, because frankly there has not been a single project I've ever been associated with that didn't have a set of civil drawings. So just simply sending an email and asking the question, even if the answer is no, well, you've asked the question and verified. But you can also see that this is drastically reduced, and we can even further reduce the file size of each file. So we have a couple of sheets in here that actually are still fairly large, like this GN211 as a 27 kilobyte file, 27,000 kilobyte file. That's a fairly large file. We can do a reduced file size later on when we're done with our work, but you can certainly appreciate the original file size at 193,316 kilobytes. Again, it's a very cumbersome large file to be working with, which is again why I like going with the individually extracted files, because thinking about how we're going to navigate these sheets from an iPad, again with maybe limited connectivity issue, if we have smaller sheets, at least they'll pull up a lot faster. So going into the extracted files, we'll just take a look at a couple sheets here, like A203. You can double click it and it will just bring up that one sheet. It's one of one, so it's not one of 218 anymore, as you can see. I still have this compiled set up, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. And you'll notice too in Bluebeam it kind of works like a browser where it'll keep tabs on the top of all your open documents. And at some point, the tabs get too many in here, and it'll start giving you a little drop down where you can access more of your files that you might not be able to see at the time. But I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this particular set. I don't want that cumbersome set in here. But again, I just want you to see that indeed our sheet sets are now just as single sheets. But even in a single sheet set like this, I mean, there's a lot of cumbersome issues we have in here as far as, well, how do I get to A401 if I want to see detail 5 or any of these other details on here, or even being able to jump to different window types. You know, without the sheet in a larger conformed set, it might be difficult to do that without having hyperlinks on there. And a hyperlink is just something where I can click on this and it'll take me to at least sheet A-221, which Bluebeam in the 2018 Extreme version actually allows you to do, in a sense, automatically with a few clicks. You can go through the process of doing an initial link where if I click on A-221, it'll take me to that sheet immediately. It won't zoom in on any details, like it won't take me to detail 7 on sheet A221. But the process, if I didn't have that detail, would be to go to File, Open, and go to that same detail, A221. So I'd go to A221. Here it is, and I had to go zoom in and find detail 7. So there's detail 7. Here I'm at A203. That detail 7, I would have to go actually find that page and zoom in on that detail. But thinking of it from an efficiency perspective, I want to save everybody else working on this project time to not have to go through that process of bringing up each file individually. It's cumbersome. It's annoying, frankly, to have to do that. But when you think about it, that's kind of what you have to do when you have a hard copy paper plan. Is you're physically looking at a sheet of paper and you have a half-size set or a full-size set with all the drawings in there. You look at this detail, then you have to go flip the drawing to sheet A221. So in a way, it's similar to, all right, if this wasn't linked, going out and finding sheet A221, just as I did, it took a few seconds. It wasn't a drastically long period of time, but multiply those few seconds. If it took me 10 seconds to find that detail, how often do I do that every day? And on top of that, how often does everybody else on my project team have to do that all day long, every day through the duration of the project? So again, thinking of it from an efficiency standpoint, what if I could make it easier for somebody and faster for somebody to navigate? It saves everybody time on the job site, and then that's multiplied if the company that you're working for shares this exact linked file with the subcontractors, which is not uncommon these days, that subcontractors are given access to this linked file, and they also are more efficiently able to navigate these drawings. Okay, and keep in mind too, we're just talking about the initial navigation of the drawings, not even talking about yet adding anything like RFIs or even submittals on there, or even doing some markups for keeping as-builts up to date. For say the superintendent on the site might have a set specifically for as-builts, and that superintendent can mark up anything on those drawings, and that's going to be kind of the record set. So if a pipe didn't get installed exactly where it was located because there was some obstruction in the way, they can make notations directly on the set and say pipe moved 10 feet to the south, and actually draw on a line representing the new location of the pipe. But enough on that. As far as getting to the actual hyperlinking side of it, we can get out of these drawings here and come up to this batch file drop down menu and go to this thing called link. So this is called batch link. So we're going to do a new batch link. We're going to add a folder, that same folder that we which I'll hop out of here. So that same folder that we put all those files in was the extracted files folder. So this is going to look at any drawing that's in this folder, which is all 218 of our drawings. So we want that to automatically do that for us. So let's see if I can resize this so you can see everything I'm doing here. Sorry about that. There we go. So I have that file selected, extracted files, select folder. There it is, extracted files. That's the only thing I want to add in there. Now I go to next. And now it's going to ask me a few questions. For instance, generate the search terms. Well, what labels do I want to look for in each drawing? So it's actually going to be, because I chose the page label, it's going to make it a little easier because you saw that A221 detail 7 on A221. Well, I want this program to find all instances of A221 on all sheets in the whole entire document set and provide a link so that it hyperlinks to sheet A221. And that's essentially what this is going to do by setting this up. So again, page label, since we already have them labeled, I could choose file name because, as you recall, when I export them, the file name actually became or came from the page label. But I just, in general, leave it on page label. So you can come in here and go to settings and choose how you want to search for the page label, because it might be difficult based on how the architect or structural engineers actually labeled their sheets. Excuse me, to have the program search for the entire value that you want. So like GN-001. If I do first from dash, for instance, if I do dash in a GN-001, it's only going to look for GN. Well, as you recall, looking in there was a bunch of GN sheets. So I don't want to choose the dash as the breaker point there, because I also don't want it looking at all of the entire page label if I did that, but I didn't. So I want to go first from space. So it's going to look at, as you can see, GN-001 doesn't have a space in it, but right after 001 there was a space because that's the end of it. But generally speaking, when architects, engineers, and all those consultants label their pages, they typically use something like a A001 space dash space general information. That's how they typically label. It's not across the board that way, but more often than not, that's what I see. But being able to search for these terms, looking at what your search term is here, is going to be vital, because when you change this up a little bit, whether it's a period, a space, a dash, an underscore, whatever that is, you really need to pay attention to what that actual search term is to be sure that that search term matches what your page label is, your file name is. In this case it is, so we're good there. You can go to link options and you can change as far as what it will visibly look like. Excuse me, if you do a hyperlink, it's actually going to color it green, so it's going to be very visible to you where the hyperlinks are in the drawing. But you can change this to a number of different colors. You can make it clear so it doesn't actually show up if you prefer. Excuse me, I don't really know a reason why you wouldn't want to have it visible like a highlighted green color. It just seems like good practice, and whether it's green, red, I guess it doesn't really matter, just as long as it's additionally visible beyond just somebody assuming there's a link there because there's a section there. But maybe one reason why there might not be a link there is because the architect mistakenly put the wrong page label on the sheet, and that page doesn't actually exist. So you might think there's a link there if you made them clear, and there really isn't one there. So it's almost like a safety check for you by coloring them green, as you'll see here in a minute. If I go through my set of plans after I've got all these links done, and I see a section that doesn't have a hyperlink on it, it's not highlighted green, that tells me there might be a problem with that link, that, well, the program didn't recognize that, so maybe the page doesn't exist, or maybe there's something wrong with the text or something like that. But again, it just points out an issue. But once you have these settings the way you want them, then you hit this generate button, and it's going through the entire set of drawings, finding every instance of this, every instance that there is possible out there. So here you see the search term, and you see the destination is the actual file name. So it's going to look on every single individual sheet, and when it finds GN211, it's going to hyperlink to sheet GN211. So I can hit run, and this is going to take a little bit of time for it to run through all these drawings. So when I'll pause the video, and when we come back, I'll show you what the outcomes of this process are. And you'll see how much easier right away it is to actually navigate these drawings with relatively little effort that we've done to the drawings themselves. So this batch summary that just ran says there's 1,709 hyperlinks that were created in those 218 sheets individually as individual files. So I'll hit this finish and close button and show you. If I pull up, let's see, the GN, I believe 002 was the sheet index. What you'll notice is there's lots of green highlighted sheet labels in here, and what that actually is you'll notice what the cursor looks like is just a flat hand laid out, but watch what happens when I hover over each one of these links. Actually, it turns into a finger, which is a link. So I can click on A232 and it brings up sheet A232, and magically within sheet 232 there's also links to other sheets in there. So now you can see just by the few clicks that the few processes that we've gone through in here of just labeling the sheets and then generating each sheet as an individual file and then generating links on those sheets, we've made this process of navigating these drawings that much faster. So you see what happens is it basically jumps you to that sheet. It opens the full page of the sheet. So in a way, you still have to remember, when I go to this detail, detail 5 on A752, I still need to remember to zoom into detail 5. That's the actual detail that I'm needing to see on this sheet. So when I get to the sheet, I need to go and zoom into detail 5. So there is still an extra step involved. And a lot of your softwares like Procore and other softwares such as PlanGrid is another one, do the automatic links just like you saw, and they'll jump you to the overall sheet. But one thing that's, if you want to take the time and do, which is actually very useful, and you'll see why here in a minute, is to actually create these sheets such that when you click on, or create these links such that when you click on them, it actually jumps you straight to detail 5. Instead of the zoomed out page, when you're on A264, if you jump on that detail, you'll be looking at detail 5. You don't have to think to go zoom in on detail 5. It will automatically take you there. That's not an automatic process to do that. It is a few extra steps to do. But as you see, I'll do an example of that with this very sheet. Or not this very sheet, I might pick another one. One with a lot of details on it. To show you the value of, if you have a sheet with 30 details on it or whatever, that you don't have to take the time to go find that detail on that sheet if you have already told it to jump specifically to that detail. But actually, before I do that, I did want to address something that I did find or notice here in the sheet index, which happens from time to time, and you'll see why it happened here in a second. But if you notice in the sheet index, pretty much all of these pages that are in the sheet index are highlighted, with the exception of a number of bulk sheets. If you look here, our structural sheets did not link as we would have expected them to. And we can look at the way that this is labeled. This is labeled as S-202. If we go back to our file name, zoom or scroll down, that's not how they're actually labeled. It's labeled just S202. So it's not that the program made a mistake. There's a mistake in the consistency of how the architect labeled the structural sheets in the architect's index versus the way the structural engineer labeled the sheet. So you see S202, there's no dash in there. But if I go back here, S-202 is the label. So there is a way for us to manually create links, and I can show you that as an example real quick for this one here, this S-202. So I can actually come in here and create a hyperlink without having to go through the batch link process. So actually, if I come over and hover over this little location symbol, it's called links. All those hyperlinks that I created are actually all individually listed here, which we'll use here in a little bit as well. But if I grab this little hyperlink tool, or I can just hold Shift plus H, it shows you here when I hover over it what the shortcut key is for that. But if I just click this, I have the sheet open, S202. I can just highlight it after clicking that link, and then come in here to jump to S202. Hit OK, and there it created a link. So if I not delete it, but if I exit out of that, so it's not directly up there. And before I move on, again, save. Very good habit to get in. You can see that link looks now just like the other links. No real difference there, and there's no real difference in how it works. So now sheet S202 is right at my fingertips. Okay. We are fortunate though that within these structural sheets, the engineer did maintain their labeling system correctly, so the links still worked within the structural sheet as you see here. So I can jump to sheet S311. I just have to remember to jump to detail 17. So you can see right here is a perfect example of why it might be important to just provide a link that zooms in directly on detail 17, because right there it took me 10-15 seconds just to find the detail, let alone if I'm busy or not focused and concentrate on what I'm doing. I might jump to S311 and completely forget what detail I was even looking for. So now I got to jump back to S202. Oh yeah, it was detail 17. And then jump back to S311. Okay, find detail 17. It happens. Distractions are abound as we're walking around on a project. So again, just as a perfect example of why we'd want to make it such that it would automatically jump here is because we want to remove that burden from everybody in the project team, have one person set it up, take the time to do it initially, and then you'll see here in a second how much faster it is to navigate the drawings. So the way we do that excuse me, is actually we create spaces, which are areas that we'll designate in the drawings that represent different details. And in this case, this will be detail 1, detail 2. What's nice is this structural engineer has actually provided a light blue outline that maintains that entire detail within this box. And you'll see why that's important in a minute, because the box that we're going to draw is actually going to represent detail 1, and we can link all of those other details specifically that are detail 1 to jump specifically to that particular area. And that's done with the spaces icon here off to the left. Looks like a little plan view or something. What we want to do is add a space, and when we do that, we just highlight around just like that, and I'll just type in 1, just call it 1 because that's detail 1. Then I'll come in here, highlight over detail 2, and guess what? It automatically thinks I want to go in sequence to number 2, and I do. So what's nice about this is if it's labeled properly, this is actually a fairly quick exercise to go through here, and you want to also make sure that you're not overlapping spaces. So there is a little bit of a gap there, and I'm not going all the way across because if I start overlapping spaces, it can have multiple labels, which is useful in some cases, like in punch lists where we want to label multiple areas, but not as useful in others, as you'll see. So we'll just keep going. You don't want to get complacent in this process because sometimes the engineer might skip a number, leave it blank, and that's a little bit more of a manual process. But as of right now, it appears that we're going through at a nice pace. Everything is aligning up until this point. This is a perfect example. So this blank space here would be number 11. The program doesn't know any different. So we will have to tell the program that it wants to label it as 11, but Unfortunately, we don't have an 11, so we could, although, go ahead and label this blank space 11, assuming that's where detail 11 would go, if it's issued in a later revision or addendum. But I also don't like doing that because, believe it or not, it's not always common sense for an issuance to come out. They might throw a new random detail in there and call it detail 28 or whatever it is. So I don't recommend labeling spaces that aren't actually labeled. So I'll actually have to manually come in here and change that to a 12. But no worries, as we go on to 13 here, it's continuing to number sequentially. So I'm going to pause this because I'm sure you don't want to sit there and watch me do all this. When you come back, you'll see all these spaces will be labeled. So as promised, here we are zoomed out. You can see it's kind of slightly highlighted in a light gray, light blue color. Don't forget to save, as always. It is a manual process, I'm not going to lie, as far as coming in here and doing this. I'm not sure if they figured it out. They may in a future issuance of this software, but this is a fully manual process to get it to actually zoom in on a specific detail. So you do need to have an intimate understanding of the drawings to do this. You again are taking on the responsibility of what somebody in the field will be seeing when they click on a detail. So if you make a mistake, if somebody's not paying attention, it could be detrimental. But taking the time to do this, again, pays dividends in the amount of time it saves everybody. So do take your time, double check yourself, make sure things are linking properly, and also take notes of things that are not linking. So if you have a detail on your plans but no detail sheet is provided, or no sheet is provided, or no detail on that sheet. So for instance, if we go through here and find a link to sheet S311 and detail 11, which we know there's not a detail 11, well, we would make a note of that and write an RFI to the engineer saying this detail is referencing us to detail 11 on sheet S311. However, there is no existing detail 11 on S311. Please provide detail. And then a new sheet would be issued, or an RFI sketch would be issued to provide that, and then you can add that into your drawings. But that, again, is why this process is so useful, because for one, it gets you familiar with your drawing set the very first time you encounter it digitally. I mean, if you take the time to run through this process, you get to know your drawings by default because you're looking at them, you're scanning through details, you're finding out what's missing just by going through the process. So again, I've saved that, and I'll jump back to S202 here, and we see that S311 actually has several different details. So we have detail 12 over here, detail 15 over here, detail 17. So if I go in the sheet to the links over here, and actually I'll collapse this places, these are all of the links that it found on that drawing. So some of these don't require you to jump to a specific detail. They'll just jump to the whole sheet. They're just telling you refer to S010 series for specific schedules. Now, if it does specify a schedule, like it says, refer to S010 for a foundation schedule, and there's a foundation schedule on S010, well, you can put a space around the foundation schedule and have it linked directly to that. You don't have to have a specific detail called out for it to do that. But what we're going to focus on here is all these S311s. So you see from here, S311, all the way through here. So all of these, actually, I can go in and now something more than just jumping to the whole page view of S311. I can right-click on this, hit Edit Action, and now look what I can do here. Keep in mind, I'm the one that needs to take responsibility for this, is that this is needing to go to detail 4. So when I come to the spaces drop down, I need to find detail 4. Hit enter. Now that's going to actually jump to detail 4. And there it is. So 4-S311. This is also a way for you to do a quick check once you're done to make sure that things are actually linking where they need to link. So again, this is a very manual process. This one I need to change to detail 12. This one here goes to detail 1. You can see it highlighted right there. Edit action, detail 1. Edit action, detail 17. Edit action, detail 2. Excuse me. What's nice about this as well is if you have multiples of this, you can actually go through and delete the old hyperlink. If these were all detail 2, I can delete all of these page references to S311, and I can change this one to jump to detail 2, and I could copy it to all the other locations, so I don't have to keep doing this process. There might be only a few instances where you can do that, but if there are several details that are the same exact detail reference, it might save you some time in this process. But I think you understand the idea, you get the idea of what I'm doing here as I go down. So again, I'm going to pause it, and then when you come back, you'll see I'll have completed all the S311 links. So I have completed all those S311 links. I can verify that by the fact that all the S311s, as you see here, have individual details associated with them. And you also notice that not every detail is used. So in here, I don't see a detail 3 used on this particular page. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist somewhere in the set, but this also might be even a way for you to go through and identify if there's sections provided that aren't actually referenced anywhere in the drawings. You could go drawing by drawing and check for detail if any detail 3 is provided, and if not, again, that could be used as an RFI saying, why is detail 3 provided if it's not referenced anywhere on the drawings? Please provide a reference on the plans for where detail number 3 on S311 occurs. So again, just a way for you to back check the drawings, make sure that all the information that you need is provided. And it's a process that time and time again happens from the pre-construction side all the way through construction. I mean, everybody needs to take time and understand their drawings, and one of the first things you should do, whether you're using paper prints or digital drawings, is to go through and make sure you have all the drawings you need, that you have all the details you need. So again, this is a way for you to help yourself navigate the drawings better, but also a way for you to identify some inconsistencies in the drawings. And I want to do one more quick check that I don't see any S311s down here that don't have an associated detail with them. So now, anytime I see an S311 on here, since I've completed that, I can now jump, or not jump, but when I click on this, it will jump to detail 12. So here I am, I clicked on that, it jumped right to detail 12. I didn't have to zoom in on detail 12 because I told the program when I click this hyperlink, I want it to show this detail. Again, it's a tedious process, a little, not too bad, not too terribly bad, but just imagine the value, and I hope those of you who are working in the industry professionally right now can understand the value of what was just created by a little extra work, that I don't have to zoom in on detail 17 when I get to S311. It's going to do it for me. And this could be details within details within details that this does this work the same way. Kind of like detail inception, if you will. So if there was another detail in here and I had taken the time to hyperlink specifically to that, it saves time looking at detail 17, but then time looking at the next detail, and so on and so on and so on. So it perpetuates an efficiency through the project that anybody can benefit from that would be a part of that project. And in the industry today, where turnover is sometimes prevalent in the industry, because there's, in this current market, there's lots of work going on, so it's not uncommon for people to drop what they're doing to go to another company for better pay or better benefits, whatever it is. And so this company's left with trying to find a replacement project engineer or project manager or superintendent. And having something like this already set up where somebody brand new to the job can come in and navigate the plans without any problems would speak volumes to how quickly that project can get back as good as it can back on track. Where a superintendent, project manager, or project engineer doesn't have to take the time to really learn the drawings intimately. It's kind of done for them, and they don't have to worry about it. Plus, on top of that, we can add in things like RFIs, changes to the drawings. We can slip sheet in new addendum sheets within this. We can overlay drawings, which is another very useful tool in this program. So a quick example of that, for instance, is if I have a new sheet issuance that's not clouded, I can take the old drawing and tell the program to turn it green, any line or anything, any text in there green, and then take the new drawing and turn anything within it, text or lines in there red, and overlay them. Wherever they overlay perfectly and there's no change, it's black. But wherever there's a change, you can see here there was a slight shift, for instance, in the location of this patio door or window. And then it even looks like it may have added some information, so anything red is added, anything green is deleted. So this might be that they switch sides, so this S type, maybe it's S window is going to be on the left now versus when it was on the right. You have this glass type G, or whatever information is there. You can see it's not necessarily highlighted, clouded to warn you that there was a change. This doesn't need that. This program can overlay drawings and show you where things changed. Even changing numbers here. So this was previously noted as just HG. Now it's noted as E105. It might not be a significant change, or it might be, but this program allows you to capture that. Just like, here it added some shading from the awning in the new drawing, which is why it's red, where it wasn't necessarily there in the old drawing. So again, the program is useful beyond just creating links to help you navigate, but certainly that is one of its main benefits. But for instance, if there was a change to these drawings, I can show you, for instance, how to make a markup on this drawing, and then, for instance, if you have a certain RFI number, you can actually link that RFI that's associated with it so that it would bring up that actual RFI response. So for instance, I can come back here to the main drawings and go to, say, some exterior elevations. And there might be a change, say, to this particular sliding glass door. I can create some markups on the drawing itself and even label those markups so that I know, and I can convey to others that there is a change in this particular drawing. You don't always get issued brand new plan sets when a change is made. You might be issued ASI sketches, addendum sketches, or RFIs that address the issues. So you want to, as a best practice, you want to highlight the area to draw attention to it. One of the nice things about this program is you can save some of these, at least the formatting of some of these, so that it's usable every time. You can make a special cloud for submittals, a special cloud for RFIs. I personally like this with a slight hue behind it so that it's, again, stands out, it's very visible. The cloud itself doesn't give any information, but what gives the information is a call out. So it's a, sorry, grabbed the wrong one there. There we go, call out, where I can actually put in the RFI information in here. So let's say this particular sliding glass door was affected by RFI 108. I can put RFI 108 right there on the drawing, and I can actually create a condition where this call out will link by an edit action, will link to the actual RFI. I want it to open a specific drawing, so I can check open or RFI, and then I could go back out. I created an RFI folder. Here's RFI 108. It opened, and now when I click on that, it's going to take me to RFI 108. This little edit action detail is the one that actually will jump to it. But if I flatten or make the markup part of the drawing, you'll see here that the entire markup actually becomes the link itself. So if I just hover over that little square there, that little lightning bolt, that's the actual link I could use now. But I also don't want somebody moving that later. So using the flatten tool, or under documents here under flatten, this will actually make it part of the document. So you can see I can no longer edit that. I can unflatten it and bring it back to an editable state, but this, I don't have to worry about somebody coming in here and moving that around. So in this case, when I click on it now, the entire call out is linked and it jumps me to RFI 108. So I can see what the question was and then what the actual response from the architect was for that particular RFI. So again, it's a very useful tool, a useful thing to go back through and add this to your digital plans, because it makes the plans as up to date as possible. So having a plan set that doesn't have any RFIs associated with it was just the same as taking a set of hard copy prints that's in the superintendent's trailer on the job site and never updating them with the RFIs. You know, that's just a no-no in the industry. Is whenever you get an RFI, part of your process is to go in and update your drawings as soon as you get the RFI. Well, now you're doing that, but you're doing it in a digital sense instead of an actual physical sense. But the nice thing about this too is you don't have to just put RFI 108. You can put additional information in there, and you can move it around so it's not going to cover any other text in the drawing. But it doesn't have to just say RFI 108. You can type other small comments in there, even notes to keep to yourself to you know, make sure that you're going back and double checking something and you know, getting the proper action that you're trying to get out of it. But that exact same process I just showed you for creating this RFI 108, I mean, I clouded the area here and then provided a call out and then link that call out with the actual RFI, can be done with submittals, for instance. So perfect example of if you get a light fixture schedule, you run that through as a submittal, you get approval or it gets rejected, you have to make changes, you resubmit it, it gets approved. You can actually link that entire fixture submittal to the fixture schedule that's in the drawings. So, you know, when you're on site looking at fixtures in a finished room and you want to verify that's the correct fixture, well, you can actually link to the approved submittal and look through the submittal for that particular fixture. What's even better is you can go to that fixture schedule, and I'll just jump to one here to give you an example. Not that I've got this fixture schedule link. Let's try and find it. Here's a light fixture schedule. So you could have gone through this fixture schedule and provided a hyperlink here in U1 that opens up page 42 in the lighting fixture submittal, and that's the U1 fixture. So you can actually individually link all of these light fixtures to their approved light fixture in the submittal. So you can see ultimately what the comments were, whether or not the fixture is the approved one or not, because it's not uncommon for the light fixture schedule to show this fixture, but another one is actually approved in the submittal. So if you don't have that information readily available to you, you wouldn't expect a superintendent to walk around with a half-size set of prints and all of the submittals that were ever approved in the job. You can do that all digitally. I mean, it can be anything from truss approval drawings that you can attach to the structural second floor plan, or the roof truss approval drawings that you attach to the structural roof plans, or it could be plumbing fixture submittals, it could be paint. So a finish schedule that has PT1, PT2, PT3, you can actually provide a link to each one of those colors to the actual approved color in the submittal. So you can actually see for yourself what that color would look like. You have to be cautious, though, looking at something digitally for color versus physically in front of you. They might differ a little bit, but you at least get an idea of what the color should be. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the things that you could add to your drawings. It's really limitless, the additional information that you can put in your drawings. But just think, again, from the perspective of doing this work, having one person in charge of doing this work on a job can pay dividends for everybody on the job being able to access as much of the information as possible quickly at their fingertips without having to, go find the approved lighting fixture submittal and then, flipping through it digitally, at least clicking through it to find, on the 87th page, here's your U5 fixture on the 87th page of the lighting fixture submittal. If you were the one that did the approval, you are already the one that knows that submittal the best and should have a pretty good idea of, or can do it better than anybody, run through that submittal and find out what page is associated with which approved submittal. So I again think it's almost limitless on what the information you can put on here, and being that it's digital, that you're not necessarily enlarging the file size here as much as you are providing these links to other areas in your project folder structure. So this RFI, for instance, is not part of this drawing on A302. This RFI is not part of the drawing. Only the markup is, but the link itself is taking you to a completely different file. So as long as your iPad or whatever your device you're looking at these drawings and documents in allows you to navigate through your company's folder structure, this is something that, again, you can utilize, and it's basically transferable as long as the folder structures remain equivalent. So I can't, for instance, just copy over the extracted files to a flash drive and put them on another computer without copying that RFI folder as well in this same folder structure that RFI folder resided in. So if it was a completely unique RFI folder outside of the drawing folder itself, I would have to copy that whole folder structure over, because essentially what you're doing with these hyperlinks, you're telling that hyperlink, go look in this folder for this particular file label and open that file. So if you, again, don't copy the folder over, that link will in here turn red. It'll say it's broken because it's not able to find that. You can also actually attach documents within this sheet. It does increase the file size slightly, but that's another way around that, and just another way to accomplish that goal. But you also don't even have to stop at these labels here. You could also go through and hyperlink the B-type window to the window schedule, and so when you click on this hexagonal B, it will jump you to the window schedule. Wall types are another one that I like to do when you're looking, for instance, at a floor plan view. Let's just look at, just type a floor plan here, just real quick. So you might have different labels for different walls or doors. This W6 wall, I can put a hyperlink on a W6 wall here. I can search for W6 in all the drawings and then have it hyperlink back to that particular wall type. And I can do that without too much trouble. I can go to this search bar over here, and I could just type in W6. And then I could tell it where to search. I can either search this whole page, or I can search a folder, which in this case I'd want to search the extracted files folder. So it's going to look for W6 in every single one of those files. Hit search, and it's, again, it'll take a little while to run through every single sheet, but you can see what's going on here. It's looking through every single sheet. It's starting with GN, and it's already finding some of these wall types. In this case, it found this particular wall type. Well, if I wanted to jump to actually W6, just like I did the other links, I would have to actually create a space around here and call it W6, which I can do. Again, go into spaces, add a space, highlight over here, and just call it W6, and hit OK. Not sure if that canceled my search or not. Nope, search is still going on. But you can see, as I jump to these next ones here, it's finding all the instances of W6 on all these plans. So once this is done, you'll see what I'm going to do here is I can actually highlight all those and tell it to jump me to sheet GN201 to that detail, the space W6. And I'll do, once this, I'll pause it, and once it comes back, I'll show you how that's done. So here we are, it's completed. It said it found 142 results in 13 documents for W6. So I can just spot check every now and then, and sure enough, it's finding that same W6 that I want it to. So what I can do now is actually tell it to select all of those W6s except for this one on sheet GN201. I don't want it to provide a hyperlink there because it's going to be a circular reference. It's going to just take me right back to that same detail. It doesn't make any sense. So every other one of these is now highlighted or checked. And now I'm going to tell it what to do with that. So I'm going to tell it under check options to hyperlink checked. Well, it's already going to jump to GN201, but again, I want it to jump to detail W6. Hit OK. And it's going to run through every single one of those sheets and add hyperlinks to the W6 wall that it found. All those W6 walls, 141 if you don't count the one it found on sheet GN201. So again, it's going through putting those links so that when I click on any one of those W6 walls, it should jump me directly to that detail. So here we are, the W6. Let's see. Boom, jumps me right to W6. So again, the possibilities are limitless for you to make just about anything more easy for anybody to find more information about, just by taking some time to understand the drawings and understand how it's going to link you to those drawings. That's going to be it for this tutorial. I'm going to have another series coming up in another day or two on how to use Bluebeam for punch lists, how to create and manage punch lists using Bluebeam, because the quality control side of punch list is pretty useful in Bluebeam itself. There are other, again, just with anything, there are other programs that can do that as well, but I like the Bluebeam software just because it combines that feature and many other features into one software package, where I wouldn't want to have multiple different software packages, different punch list management software and a different estimating software package and a different document management software package. It's all kind of combined into one. It certainly isn't perfect. I mean, there's some things that I wish Bluebeam could do that other programs do. But again, just for what you get with Bluebeam, it certainly is, from my perspective at least, a very useful tool for construction management.